On July 20th, 2010, the Inglewood City Council was considering removing James Butts from the mayoral ballot because the county registrar had discovered that the county could not confirm that James Butts was actually registered to vote in the city of Inglewood by the date required for him to run for mayor in Inglewood. Butts himself admitted that he submitted the voter registration at the last minute, over a month after he claimed he moved to the city. So that night, James Butts, his campaign manager, and his attorney spoke at the meeting. And they all either tried to or actually did violate the rules of the meeting. James Butts in particular demonstrated that he had no respect whatsoever for the rules of the city council meetings. James Butts' personal misconduct violations of the rules that night included repeatedly refusing to leave the speaker's podiums after his time was up, repeatedly disrupting the meeting by yelling out from the audience, disrupting the council meeting by walking out of the audience into the staff-only area behind the city clerk's seat and physically touching the city clerk, repeatedly disobeying the council chair's order to return to his seat, forcing the council chair to instruct the sergeant of arms to restrain Butts, and having his campaign manager hold up a sign in the chamber, which is a violation of the rules. First, James Butts' attorney asked for an extra 3 minutes to speak, literally twice as much time as is allowed to Inglewood's own residents.
Thank you. My name is Jesse Minardi. I'm an election attorney representing Mr. Butts in this matter, and I would request an additional few minutes.
He wasn't given any extra time, and he said that Butts wouldn't need any extra time to give his speech.
No. He is going to get 3 minutes to make his case, and he will make it in 3 minutes.
Let's see if Butts does what his attorney says he'll do, follow the same rules as everyone else, and take only 3 minutes to give his speech.
Butts' allegations against the city clerk and her staff will be noted in red letters.
Next is James Butts, followed by Richard Cavalier, and then Joe Matthews. Mr. Butts.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I could make a slight request before I start.
What is that?
The first notice that I had of the city clerk's report was when it was released to the internet like everyone else, and there were aspersions made basically to my character and credibility, but I was not allowed to respond in kind, so that could be posted as well. So I would like to ask your indulgence for an extra minute so that I can respond in full and give my information.
I'll give you 4 minutes, Mr. Chair.
Good evening. My name is James Butts, and I currently live at 2512 West 102nd Street in Inglewood. I'm a former 5-year resident of the city. 3 of my children were educated here at various stages in their education. I'm a candidate for mayor in the runoff election on August 17th. Council will discuss tonight the city clerk's report from July 20th. A report not seen by me until it was posted on the internet. I've had no opportunity for clarification or rebuttal, and you sit poised to potentially overturn the will of 2,471 voters who voted for me, effectively denying their Fourth Amendment rights to equal protection under the law. I want to address 2 issues in this report: my date of registration change requested, and the clerk's references to my declining her request to file an affidavit. I moved to Inglewood in the first week of February, filed to have my voter registration change effective February 6th, a Saturday, because I knew my move would be completed by Saturday. I didn't want anyone to say he doesn't really live here, but he filed to vote here. I filed my paperwork with the city clerk's office on or about March 10th. While at the clerk's office, a verification check of my residency and registration on file with the LA County Registrar's Office was conducted. I stood not far from the clerk when she called the Registrar's Office. She stated words to the effect that this is the Inglewood Clerk's Office conducting a residence and voter registration check for a candidate in the Inglewood mayoral election. She gave my name and at some point mentioned my address. Whether this was her giving the address or responding to the address that was given, I do not know. She asked for the date of voter registration. She then hung up the phone. The entire process took about a minute to 90 seconds at most. She came back to the counter and stated that everything checked out and accepted my $2,100 filing cashier's check. I campaigned, raised money, and spent my own money, and finished second in the June 8th race, collecting over 2,400 votes. 2 weeks after the election, I was called by the city clerk, Yvonne Horton, who said she needed to meet with me at 9 a.m. in her office the next day to discuss an issue. When I arrived, she was with Fred Woocher, an elections attorney. She stated that a complaint had been made regarding the timeliness of my voter registration filing. She also stated that an honest mistake had been made by the county in providing my registration filing date. She handed me a copy of my old voter registration card from 5825 Shenandoah in Los Angeles, that is now on the internet, by the way, and stated that the county had verified my date from this card, which is December 29, 2006. I knew immediately that this was not plausible, having stood and listened to the conversation. How could two people have a conversation, the primary purpose of which was to verify a registration address in Inglewood without talking about the address? My registration card from Shenandoah has no reference to Inglewood. Ms. Horton then proceeded to tell me that the county had retrospectively determined that they could only verify my filing date as February 12, 2010, 4 days too late, as that was the date the information was entered into their computer, as they could not determine when and how they received the request. Since this information was in their records on March 10th when I filed my candidate papers, I would understand it if this was the date that was given, if the county truly felt that way at that time. But they didn't. If they'd given that date, I would not have been allowed to run. So I knew that neither of these two dates had been given by the registrar's office. Ms. Horton and Mr. Woocher then pressed me to complete an affidavit of the facts of my filing. I was not represented by counsel, and I was guarded, believing that the facts were being misrepresented to obtain the facts. I was not represented by counsel, and I was guarded, believing the facts were being misrepresented to obtain a desired outcome. I declined to provide an affidavit and said I wanted to consult with counsel. After research, I became aware that there were notes in my computer file with the registrar indicating a registration change date of February 6, 2010, and had a photo taken of that information from the screen. I also consulted an attorney who stated the preparation of an affidavit would cost me $3,000 and advised against submitting my information to an investigation where the facts were obviously being manipulated.
Thank you very much.
As a note,
Thank you very much.
if I could have
I
one more
gave you
minute.
the 1 minute. I gave you the 1 minute. I'm sorry. No, they did not. We wanted to get. Thank you.
You're about to disenfranchise 2,400 people.
Thank you very much.
Give me 30 seconds.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I will seek a minute.
Richard Cavalier, you know, because they were start having other people doing the same thing.
James Butts asked for an extra minute to speak. He was actually given an extra minute and 40 seconds, but he still wasn't satisfied. He kept talking, disrupting the meeting, refusing to leave the podium, asking for another minute, then another 30 seconds. He eventually spoke for over 5 minutes. And he had his campaign manager hold up a sign in council chambers. All of this was against meeting rules, and James Butts wasn't done breaking the rules yet. After James Butts spent quite some time attacking the city clerk and her staff, the city clerk spent some time responding to his attacks.
And then there was just one other thing that Mr. Butts said. He made a statement, and I forgive him for it, but he said that the city clerk verified his residency, and I was the one that called, and I was not. It was my deputy, Cheryl Moore, who sits on beside of me, and I just want that to be clarified.
Excuse me. Point of order. Point of order. The Sergeant of Arms, please. We must have this council remain before us. You'll allow to speak a little bit later. Please finish your comments. Please finish your comments. Please finish your comments. Please. Sergeant of Arms, please.
Apologies accepted.
Point of order. Point of order.
Apologies are
I
accepted.
will remind the audience that public session is over at this time. It is now for this council to hear from our staff before we make our determination. All right.
Apology is accepted. I know people make mistakes. You know, this is
Mr. Butts,
understandable.
please remove your presence from the city clerk. Sergeant of Arms, please remove him from the city clerk. Thank you. Now we will continue.
On this July 20th, 2010 night, an angry, snarling, scowling James Butts spent the majority of his allotted time for public comments implying or outright saying that Yvonne Horton, Inglewood City Clerk, and or her staff engaged in some kind of unethical or otherwise improper conduct in regards to recommending that he be removed from the mayoral race. However, even though 2.5 years ago James Butts implied or accused the city clerk and her staff of not telling the truth, manipulating election information, misrepresenting the facts, etc., on April 9th, 2010, when 2 other Inglewood City Council members allegedly complained about the clerk's handling of their elections, James Butts suddenly got amnesia and said this.
Now, this woman kicked me off the ballot, right? And she kicked my butt off the ballot, and you know what? I came and made my little appeal, and she said, you're gone, and they said I'm gone, and I'm here working with them. But you know what? I didn't say, oh, she's a crook, oh, this and that.
Butts might not have said the city clerk was a crook, but he said a whole lot of this and that, including that the city clerk wrote a report that attacked Butts' character and credibility, that the city clerk released that report before giving him a chance to respond, that someone in the clerk's office had something to do with his voter registration card, with his address on it being put on the internet, that what the clerk told him about his voter registration date was not plausible, meaning that the city clerk did not tell him the truth, that the city clerk was involved in misrepresenting the facts to obtain a desired outcome, lying, that the county registrar did not give the clerk's office the voter registration date that the city clerk said it gave, that the city clerk told him that the county registrar said the records showed Butts was registered on February 12th, which made him ineligible to run for mayor, when Butts has evidence proving that he was registered to vote on February 6th, which made him eligible to run for mayor, and that the city clerk was involved in an investigation where the facts were obviously being manipulated.
It's very obvious that that night, James Butts was accusing the city clerk's office of being either incompetent or dishonest. He was accusing them of election fraud. Now, that night, James Butts acted mad and gave everyone the impression that he was being denied the chance to run for mayor, not due to any fault of his own, but because of some nefarious scheme by the city clerk and others. And although he admitted that he was given the chance to submit an affidavit saying when he turned in his registration to the county, he said he was afraid to do that because he wasn't represented by an attorney. The problem is that his attorney was there that night, and Butts could have talked to the attorney weeks before the meeting. And as we're about to hear, he was given the chance to turn in the affidavit that night and still refused to do it. Here, the city clerk states that if Butts would have filled out the affidavit in their meeting, she would have let him run.
When he came back to me, he said he didn't want to do the affidavit. Now, I want to make it very clear that I don't know anything about a $3,000 fee. That was not presented in our conversation. I don't know anything about that. I was willing to take his word, the truth, write it down on paper, giving us a little brief synopsis of when he actually registered and when did he take it to the county, because they couldn't tell me. They didn't stamp it in. So I have to have something to go on. I need you to work with me. And so he didn't want to do it.
The city clerk again says that she would have let Butts run for mayor if he would have turned in the affidavit.
I'm willing to accept this. I would have accepted that document and moved this election right on. But if you don't meet me halfway, I can't help you.
The city clerk even says that she would take the affidavit from Butts that night.
I want to emphasize the $3,000. There was no mention ever of any money. All he had to do was write the truth on paper, and I would have accepted it. And if the council tonight wants to accept it, I will accept it. If he wants to write an affidavit tonight and give it to me, and I will pass it on to you, and if you would like to accept it, I'm willing to accept it.
But even though Butts was supposedly so upset that he was being denied a chance to run for mayor, and denied for false reasons, and that all the votes cast for him would be wasted, Butts still refused to swear under oath that he had turned in his registration on time, which seems to indicate that Butts knew he was not telling the truth, and that he had just irresponsibly forgot to turn in his registration on time, but that he was going to use this issue to get sympathy from the public for the next time he ran.